Good morning and welcome to the VSA Morning Miner. It's Tuesday, the 31st of January, and I'm joined by David Scriven today. David, how are you?
Not too bad, Ollie. And I might be worth something now, simply because having had a hip operation, maybe they put some kind of critical metal in to support that hip structure that's in there now. Anyways, more importantly, on news today, I did notice that Sigma Rock, the trading in the final few weeks of the year was actually very robust. The group expects to report fiscal year EBITDA and EPS slightly ahead of current market consensus. So revenues of 525 million, EBITDA of 100 million, EPS up 40% at 7.7p. So very encouraging results for them, as it seems. And there's some interesting news, I guess, on Gemfields and Hochschild and others.
Yes, well, it's great to have you back. Yeah. Yes. Well, actually, let's start with some news we missed yesterday. MMG announced they're potentially going to be halting production at Las Bambas in Peru on the back of protests which have been blocking traffic and meaning they've been running down their consumables. And so they'd said that if they get too low on those, they're going to have to stop production. Las Bambas is a 240,000 ton a year copper mine, one of the biggest in the world. So an extended impact on production would be significant for the copper markets, particularly as consensus pricing has been fairly low for this year on the back of supply being higher this year. But disruption like this could reset those expectations. But these protests have been in part on the back of the change in government in Peru, and the transition from Castillo has not been quite as smooth as perhaps hoped, which brings us on to Hochschild, who are also operating in Peru, and they've come out with their end of year production figures and guidance for the year ahead. So they produced about 11 million ounces of silver and 206,000 ounces of gold. So that ends up at about 26 million ounces silver equivalent, or 339 ounces of gold equivalent. And their costs are expected to be within the guidance range of 1330 to 1370. The guidance for 2023 is a little lower in gold equivalent terms at 301 to 314 thousand ounces, but 25 to 26 million ounces silver equivalent. So I think there's a bit of an impact from the gold silver ratio they're using there, more so than changes in production. But the cost guidance is shifting up slightly. So 1370 was the top end last year. That's now the bottom end, up to 1450. What they have highlighted, though, is that this guidance is conditional on receiving an updated environmental permit from the Peruvian government, and they've delayed their full year annual results into April on the back of that. But given those transition issues, getting that permit on time is clearly a risk and something to watch in relation to the stock.
They're expecting that to be, it's in Calder, isn't it? And that's in Q1, hopefully. In Pilar.
Yes. Yeah. That's the target, and then they'll be able to issue proper guidance and everything, I guess, at the full year results, in the full knowledge of the outcome. Moving on to Gemfields. They have announced record annual revenues of $333 million this year. That's up 32% year on year. Given the strong performances in the various auctions, I think a strong year had been expected. Net cash is now at $104 million, and I think the market cap is only about 230 million. So that is an indication of value. Although I do note when you go into the detailed presentation, costs have been steadily rising. I think that's probably a combination of inflation and also rising output, as that's in $1 million terms rather than unit cost terms, after the disruption last year. So mining rates picking back up and therefore absolute costs rising. But yeah, a good year for the emerald market, and something we've been looking at in other areas is that the reopening of China after COVID should have a positive impact on spending on things like jewelry, diamonds, emeralds. There's a statistic we mentioned a couple of weeks ago that China's household saving balance has increased 42% since the start of the pandemic, and household savings are now $4.8 trillion, which is the same size as UK GDP. So plenty of pent up demand for spending as China gets back to normal.
That's a very interesting stat.
I think the last one today is probably Bushveld. They have announced full year production and operational update. So 3,842 tons of vanadium produced. That was up 6.9% year on year, although marginally below the guidance range, 3,900 to 4,100. The Vanchem operation was impacted by load shedding in South Africa, which has obviously been widely reported, but the Vametco operation actually outperformed its guidance, with management clearly trying to offset the impact at Vanchem. It does look like that's going to be carrying on into 2023, as the guidance for 4.2 to 4.5 thousand tons is still below the group's target nameplate capacity of 5 to 5.4 thousand tons. Costs were up about 6% for the year, to $27.7 thousand a kilo. And for the year ahead, they're expected to drop given the higher production, guided, but modestly, to $26.1 to $27,000 a kilo, which does include the 20% hike in Eskom power prices. But when you're a UK listener, a 20% in power prices doesn't seem that bad. But clearly, the consistency of power delivery is something to watch going forward.
Indeed, I don't think I have any further comments to make. Do you think that probably wraps things up?
Yeah, there's quite a bit there. So yeah, I think we'll call it a day there. Thanks, David, for joining, and glad you're back.
Thanks very much.